Hello there, everybody. My name is Kia Stevens, and I am the creator of the Father Swap blog, where the aim of the blog is to help women exchange their father wounds for the love of God the Father, whether that be uh, for women who have been wounded by way of divorce, abandonment, abuse, incarceration, drug addiction, alcoholism, death, or physical presence but emotional absence. The blog exists to serve women who have been wounded in this way. So, if you are joining me tonight for our discussion on when Father's Day is difficult, I want to say welcome. I am excited to have you here with me, and I do want to give this voice to one concern that came up when I sent my invitations out for this event. I had one person to comment back and say, "Are you able to speak on this topic?" And I do want to say that yes, I am able to speak on this topic. It's not because that's what my degree is in. I'm actually an elementary school teacher by trade. I went to school for that and taught for 15 years. But I am able to speak on this subject because I learned from the School of Hard Knocks. I'm still in that school. I'm getting a doctoral degree, probably lifetime doctoral student. But about how the blog came about 7 years ago. I was just really having a difficult time in life, and I had just had my youngest son. I had two kids in diapers, and I was working full time, and I had a loved one that was about to transition, about to die, and just had some marital turmoil going on, just a lot of things. So I decided to take myself to go and get some counseling. I did. And while the counselor was helping me to process some childhood hurts, one of the things she suggested to me was to write a letter to my father, a forgiveness letter. And I was really taken aback because I wasn't raised with my father growing up. I was raised in a single parent home. My parents got divorced when I was just a baby. So it was really something I just didn't understand. But I did take her word, take her advice, and I wrote the forgiveness letter and was really shocked to see how difficult it was for me to write it. It was difficult for me to get through it, to read it out loud in an empty chair. And so it was signaling to me that I had some issues. I had some father wounds. And that kind of beget this season of a lot of introspection, a lot of work, a lot of research, because I really found myself wanting to know, well, what should a father do in the life of a daughter? And if that father is not there, how does it manifest itself in the life of the daughter? What does it look like? And so I was just reading everything I could get my hands on. I was looking at a webinar, if I saw a webinar or a YouTube video or whatever resources were available. I remember Oprah's Daddyless Daughter Life class came on during that time. It's been maybe a 7 year period where I've been kind of doing all this work on me. But between that 7 years ago and now, that class came on, so I was watching that. I was taking notes. I was working on me. I was also journaling at this time and maintaining my relationship with the Lord, and still doing some counseling here and there. And so that is really the foundation for the Father Swap blog, and that's what qualifies me to speak on this subject. And if you want to know more about that journey, I pretty much chronicled a lot of it on my blog. So be sure and check that out if you need it. It's www.fatherSwap.com. fatherswap.com, like wife swap, but not wife swap. So anyways, I'm going to talk to you guys tonight about when Father's Day is difficult, but I do want to say it's really not the day that in itself is the problem. It's really what the day triggers for some of us. It's the associations that we have with the day. It conjures up memories or experiences, or brings to mind words that were said or not said, and that's more so what the issue is. It's not really the day. So I'm going to talk about give you 5 practical things that you can do if you have experienced father wounds, and if as a result of those father wounds, Father's Day is difficult for you. So let's go ahead and dive in. I want to begin with prayer. Father, I just thank you, God, for every woman that is watching now or that will watch by way of the replay. God, I pray that if she carries a wound, a father wound in her soul, God, I pray that you would make a beeline to it, God, that you would touch her heart in ways that only God, only you can touch. You would heal her heart, God, if she needs forgiveness, Lord, if she needs brokenness, Father, if she needs to be heard, God, if she needs to be loved, if she needs to be if she just needs to be touched by you, God, I pray, Father, whatever it is that she needs, God, that you would provide that for her today and during this time while she's viewing the video. I love you and I thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name, amen. So as I was preparing for this time, I really thought about a woman in the Bible, and I know everybody that sees this, you may not read the Bible, but I thought about a woman who is known as the woman with the issue of blood. She does not have a name. Some people, I was reading a commentary that said some people gave her the name of Veronica, but for our time tonight, I'm going to kind of make some similarities between, or show some parallels between the woman with the issue of blood and women who have father wounds, some similarities that I saw. And this account of this woman is mentioned in 3 of the 4 Gospels, but the account that I want to share is found in Mark 5:25 through 34, and I'm reading the New International Version. And a woman was there who had been subjected to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" Verse 32, but Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear. Told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." And I just love this story for many reasons, but I want to share with you some of the similarities that I saw between women who have been wounded by their fathers and this woman with an issue of blood. The first one that I saw was that you could not see her ailment. It wasn't like she had leprosy or that she was blind or she had a shriveled up limb or anything like that. It was something that was not disclosed to the public, although people knew about her condition, and I'll say why in point number two. But it wasn't something that was readily seen, and this is so synonymous with women who are father wounds, because it's not something that you immediately know. You might someone might be in relationship with you and never know your father-daughter story. In fact, I'm currently reading a book. I'll go ahead and reference here. You see that? The Fatherless Daughter Project by Dina Babel and Dr. Karen Louise. But basically, they talk about how the woman who has father wounds, often she is a go-getter. She's driven. She's passionate. She's leading stuff. She's dynamic. Not all the time. This is not all the time, but it's not something that you would readily say, oh, I bet she grew up without her father, or I bet her father left her mother, when she was 6. It's not something that you can always identify, and nor is it something that's talked about. The second similarity I saw is that she felt isolated in her condition. And so if you read in Leviticus 15, 19 through 32, they give extensive information as it relates to the Jewish law of how to handle women who have a discharge, if they are on their monthly cycle, or if they have a hemorrhage that extends beyond the length of a woman's monthly cycle. What should happen with these women? And basically, that woman is considered ceremonially unclean. And not only is she unclean, but her linens are unclean, her bed is unclean, the things that she touches, they are unclean, to include people. So that if she is around people, those people would be considered unclean, and they would have to wash their clothes and wash their body, and then they would not be deemed clean until later that evening. So this woman was isolated. She suffered alone. And this is so similar to women who have been wounded by their fathers. There's not really a lot of safe places, or you don't know where the safe place is to kind of say, I don't know my father. I don't know who my father is, or my father is incarcerated, or my father is on drugs, or my father is an alcoholic. There's not a lot of safe places to share this, especially when you find yourself in environments with other women that were fathered, because they're not thinking that, oh, somebody could be here that wasn't fathered. I had a situation happen to me years ago. I was at work, and I think it was Valentine's Day, and one of the ladies at work had gotten some flowers. And so I'm coming to work, running late, because I was always late. But anyways, I come into work, and the girl has this big, beautiful bouquet of flowers, and I'm like, oh, young man, got you some flowers. I said something along those lines. She's like, no, it's from my dad. And so boom, that was kind of stinging, because I had never received flowers from my dad. And then the other lady that was sitting at the desk was like, yeah, girl, I could always count on my daddy. If any man ever didn't do something for me, I knew my daddy was going to take care of me. And it was just like this moment of silence, and I don't know what came over me, but I just looked at her after I clocked in and said, that's not always the case for every woman. And it was kind of like, man, she has put a damper on everything, but she was like, well, I didn't think about that. So that is what I'm referring to in terms of isolation. The similarity between this woman with the wound is not that women are isolated and that they don't have community. There could be women around you. You could be married. You could be in a relationship, but there is still an ache that exists inside of a woman with father wounds that she finds difficult to communicate with other people, or just doesn't know who she can share it with. And I see it so much on the blog when women comment after a post and say, you know, my father left when I was sick, or when I was 6, or they shoot me an email and say I'm the result of an affair, or my father tried to commit suicide. And I'm saying, because the blog specifically deals with father wounds, women come because it appears to be a safe place. I don't have to be isolated in this ache. I can tell you. So there's a parallel between this woman in isolation. The third way that I see a parallel with the woman who had an issue of blood is that her suffering was ongoing and it was lengthy. And so in the King James version, it says, "And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years." And I use that particular version, because when you look at the Greek, the word issue, it's pronounced harusis, and it means a flowing. So this woman had blood that was flowing from her, or hemorrhaging from her, for 12 years. The Bible doesn't say did it stop for like a day, or did it pick back up after a week. It just says she was hemorrhaging for 12 years. And the most common question that I get from women is, how long? How long is this going to last? How long am I going to be grieving? How long am I going to experience this pain? When is it not going to be an issue for me? When am I not going to be crying at the Lifetime movie or the Hallmark commercial? You know, when is it going to be over? And it's somewhat like an issue. Not an issue of blood, but an emotional issue that just kind of lingers and never seems to go away. And when you think you've gotten over it, or you've healed, you have another situation or a circumstance, and it's kind of like, man, this interaction I just had with this male links back to my father wounds, or this situation I had on my job, or my fear in this situation, and it's just ongoing. So I'm going to give you some practical solutions after I finish talking about this, but let me just give you a caveat here and say that if you find yourself there saying, how long is this going to last? My honest answer is, I don't know. And then another honest answer, that you might just want to take your shoe and throw it through the Facebook screen, but there's some things I still I cry about. You know, there are some places in me that I'm still kind of wrestling with. But what I will say is that the sting lessens. The sting does lessen. So I've given you 3 ways that women with father wounds are parallel what the woman with the issue of blood was dealing with. You couldn't see her ailment. She felt isolated in her condition. Her suffering was ongoing and lengthy. And then the last one is that there was no easy cure. This woman had spent all the money that she had going to see these doctors, these physicians, and the situation that she had did not get better. The scripture tells us that it got absolutely worse. And I've joked in my writing that, you know, if you have father wounds, it's not like you can run to Walmart and pick up, you know, some pills, father wound pills, like just take 2 and call me in the morning. You can't do that. There is no prescription or no treatment plan. There's no roadmap that says do this and you will be healed, or you will feel whole, or you will feel complete, or you will be okay if you just do this. And that is a similar place that this woman with the issue of blood found herself in. She had exhausted all that she knew to exhaust in order to be better. So now, with that said, we can extract some things from this woman's life that she did to know healing and to be okay. And I want to say this is still under the umbrella of when Father's Day is difficult. I want to give you some practical things that you can do today if you want to begin to heal. really to begin to heal. So the first thing is that she acknowledged that there was a problem. Now hers was a little bit, different because she had this issue of blood. She was hemorrhaging. So it wasn't something she could ignore. She had to deal with that every day of her life for 12 long years. But what I will say with women who have father wounds, there may be an emotional hemorrhage that you might be dismissing. You could have anger, you could have rage, your ambition could be out the wazoo because you're trying to people please, or you're trying to prove something. You're trying to say, I am lovable, I am deserving of XYZ. It could be a relational hemorrhaging. You could find yourself dating the same man every relationship. It's the same man, it's the same way, it's the same old broken record, and it never gets any better. That is an emotional hemorrhage, or it could be a lack thereof. I just had an interview with Lauren Ulrich. Shout out to Lauren Ulrich. Hey, Lauren, if you're watching. And she was talking about how the way that her father wounds revealed themselves is that she went the absolute other end of the continuum and completely shied away from men altogether. So that could be an example of an emotional hemorrhage, or it could be in your eating habits. It could be in excessive fear of abandonment, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of commitment. Or it could reveal itself in low self-esteem. And those are just a few that I pulled. But if you are hearing me say some of these ways that an emotional hemorrhage could be taking place in your life, and something is kind of like, ooh, that sounds like me, or, oh, that could be a sign, or that could be God speaking to you through me, saying this is an issue in your life. And what we have to do when we recognize that is be just like this woman and say, there's a problem. There is a problem here. And so the practical application would be just to admit it. Just to say, okay, I'm not okay. Father's Day comes up and all of a sudden I'm angry, I'm tense, I'm crying, I'm watching a Lifetime movie with a box of Kleenex and a big bucket of ice cream. That's not okay. Like, why are you emotionally eating? So then after she acknowledged that there was a problem, this is where I'm just taking my creative license here, she grieved. And grief is not a one-time deal. Grief is ongoing. It is a journey more than a destination. Because I know this woman, she had to have grieved, every doctor's visit that she went to within a 12-year period. She had to grieve when it didn't work out. She got her hopes up, like maybe this time I'm going to be healed, maybe this time it's going to be different, this relationship is going to be better, this time I'm going to be whole, I'm not going to cry anymore, it's not going to affect me the way it's affected me. And then you're let down again and again and again. It requires grief, and the challenge is not to mask it and not to hide it and not to fake it and front like we're okay when we're not really okay, because we live in a society that doesn't really want to admit that there's an issue, at least not in social media. Like on social media, everybody's great. Life is gravy. I'm doing everything is like fabulous and you want my life. So it's not really the place to say everything is not okay and actually I'm hurting. But what I am, and the reason why, let me say this, the scripture doesn't say that she grieved, but the reason why I know that she had to have grieved is because she moved from that place and she was active. There were things that she did, and you cannot be active and grieving at the same time. To grieve is to, release it and to deal with it and to process it in order for you to move forward. So some practical applications in terms of grieving is, number one, just cry. I'm a firm believer in crying. Sometimes just crying and emoting, emoting what the issue is. Also counseling. I just recently wrote a blog post entitled "How to Know If You Need to See a Counselor," but I mean, this We have the World Wide Web at our fingertips. There are plenty of resources for you to access. And then also on my site, there is a counselor finder. That's what I used with Focus on the Family. You just put in your zip code and they help you find someone that has been approved based on their standards in your geographical location. So that was beneficial to me. Also, journaling and prayer. These are some practical things that you can do to grieve. Another thing, and I have this in the next point that you could do, would be to read. I know for me, I started reading. I have the book over here. I started reading this book. Can you see it? Bringing Up Girls by Dr. James Dobson, and it was educational for me, but it was also kind of a grief, a way to process my grief as well. So I would encourage you to read as well as it relates to grieving. Number 2, when we're talking about what did this woman with the issue of blood do, she diligently pursued help. And we already talked about how she exhausted all of her finances seeking help, trying to be healed, going to physician after physician. I'm not saying to exhaust your resources, but to do something, not to spend your time crying or frustrated or complaining about things that can't change. At certain times we have to accept this is how this is right now in my life, and I have to do what I can with what I can. There may be things in your life you just can't change. If your father is an alcoholic, you cannot change that. He has to change that on his own. If your father is incarcerated, you cannot change that. If your father left your mother, you cannot change that. Now, certainly you can pray for him, but there are certain things that you may not be able to change. If your father is deceased, you cannot change that. You can grieve it. You can grieve it and you can heal, but you may not be able to change your circumstance. So some ways, some suggestions to practically pursue help are reading, and I've given you some suggestions on books. Bringing Up Girls, Fatherless Daughter, Search for Significance. Here's another book that I don't have the title on here. Sorry. This is So Long in Security by Beth Moore. This is another book. I just read this not too long ago. Uninvited by Lisa TerKeurst. And here's one more. It's an older book, Always Daddy's Girl. But if you go to my website, you can, under resources, there's a whole list of books that I recommend, and they're categorized. And they're not all Christian books. Some of them are secular books, but that's another resource for you. In addition to that, counseling, which I talked about, sometimes small groups. You might also need to pursue forgiving your father. And in saying that, I do want to direct you to one of the most popular blog posts on my site, 6 steps to writing a forgiveness letter. And that might also be helpful for you. People who follow me or have seen some of the YouTube videos know that I'm always talking about a forgiveness letter. It's because I believe in it. I believe so much in this forgiveness letter. Okay, so keep it moving. What we can do, we can acknowledge that there's a problem. We can grieve, and we can diligently pursue help. And then number 3, act in faith. I love how this woman, it says, when she heard about Jesus, she didn't have to read or have proof or evidence. She just heard, and then she acted on it. And her simple act of faith, just saying, if I could just touch his cloak, I will be healed. She had that small measure. Well, it was really large. And I just want to say, it does take faith to believe that an invisible God is able to meet your emotional needs, that God, who we can't see, we can't touch, we don't audibly hear him, although there may be some people out there who audibly hear God. I have not, and I'm not ready to at this at this time. But it takes faith to believe that God is big enough. He's big enough to heal my hurts, that if I cast all my cares upon him, he actually does care for me, that God is a father to the fatherless, that I can call him Abba Father, that I am lavishly loved. All of these scriptural truths take faith to believe. And so I am encouraging you today, and I want to say this, and I'm going to move on, but I was a Christian for many, many years, and still did not realize that I wrestled with some of these truths as it pertained to my life. I was an adult when I really began to say, Kia, you cannot say that you believe God for this person's healing and not believe that God is intimately concerned about the details of your life. He is concerned. He is concerned about that. And sometimes we can have faith for other people and not have that same measure of faith for ourselves and for those emotional wounds that concern us. But God is able. And so this woman acted in faith, and that's what we need to do. And the last area is that she responded to God. And I think this is my absolute favorite part of that. I love this whole story, but this is my favorite part of this text, is that at once, after she touched his cloak, Jesus realized, wait a minute, somebody touched me. Power has gone out from me. And he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? Of course, the disciples are like, Jesus, it's crowded. What in the world are you saying? Any manner of people could have touched you. And then in verse 33, it says, then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. And what I love about this is that, yes, she could have just scurried on through the crowd and went on her merry way. But Jesus, knowing, he knew who the woman was. He knew it was her. I personally believe that he said, who touched me, for her benefit, for her behalf, because this woman who had been isolated, no one to touch her, she's ceremonially unclean, she may have had an odor because she had this issue of blood, and she was isolated from all of the people that she lived in community with. Here we see that Jesus calls her daughter. He calls her daughter. And he really didn't have to, but now he has brought her up from this place of isolation, this place of, rejection, and you're not wanted, you're not accepted, to now this place of belonging, this place of not only belonging, but family, to say, daughter, to affirm her in that way. This woman who had been so broken by her condition is now called a daughter. And this is the truth for us today. If you are listening to me and you carry a father wound, if Father's Day is difficult for you because your father rejected you, your father never said I love you, your father never told you were beautiful, maybe your father died, maybe your father had an affair and you're the product of an affair, maybe your father left your mother, whatever it is, God is saying, he is calling you and me daughter today, beloved daughter. He is saying that he loves us intimately. He is concerned about the things. 1 Peter 5:7, cast your cares upon the Lord because he cares for you. He does care for you. Romans 8:15 that says we are considered, we have been adopted to sonship, and thereby we cry, Abba, Father, that he loves us lavishly. All of those things are true. And I pray that it is an encouragement to you today that that this Father's Day would begin something different for you. So just let me refresh some practical things that you can do. Number one, acknowledge if you have a problem, acknowledge it. Grieve, and grieving is ongoing. Pursue help, and there are a lot of resources on my blog, or just Google it. It's a ton of stuff on the internet. I have shared some books with you. Act in faith and respond to God. And that's just where I want to end. I've said a whole lot of stuff, and I can't imagine if you are somebody that you said, yes, I wanted to watch this because the title spoke to me. I can't imagine that you are sitting where you're sitting and nothing has struck a chord in your heart. I just cannot imagine that. If something has struck a chord with you, I encourage you to pray about it, talk to God about it, and ask Him to lead you on this journey to emotional healing, because it is available. It's available for every woman that wants it. So that is pretty much all that I wanted to share with you. I pray it's an encouragement. Again, my name is Kia Stevens. I write a blog, the Father Swap blog. Please visit me. You can contact me, and I would love to just pray for you and help you walk through some of your hurts. That's all, and God bless.